Hey everyone, welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds. I'm Nerdarchist Ted, and today I'm joined by
Nerdarchist Dave.
And it's that time again, Critical Role. We're doing Campaign 2, Episode 16, Recap and Review. Jump down the description below where you can sign up for Nerdarchy, the newsletter, get weekly gaming tips, as well as learn how to game with Nerdarchy.
All right, Episode 16.
Episode 16.
It was a long one.
It seemed a little long, but I think there was like some combat to really, stretch this out.
Actually, I feel like that wasn't the bulk of it. The bulk of it was like the downtime activities, and it seemed like Matt was trying to hurry them through it, but they're on cruise control.
Well, I mean, these guys, they, as a group, it seems that they really get into I've got this goal thing that I want to do, and they like talking to certain NPCs. So, like, I think whenever possible, it's like, I want to go talk to Pumatsol. Like, every episode that they're going to be in Zadash, I feel like he's going to come up in some way, shape, or form.
They have their favorites, for sure. But, the episode starts right off, like you said, with combat. Because we kind of left off on a cliffhanger last week, and the Wraith Shade, whatever you want to call it, creature, Dementor like, rose up and began speaking at them, and they're like, at first they do try to negotiate a little bit, but Jester completely botched it.
So I would have liked to have. I would love to sit down with Matt and say, like, what was your plan here? Because it ended the previous session with, like, my secrets are yours. And I'm like, this sounds like the players look like they're afraid of combat. And he's looking like that this is going to be a role-playing thing. So I'm like, all right, what was his goal? What was his plan? And Jester's like, oh, I've got a secret. And she gets into this whole thing about the pastries and cinnamon.
Yeah, basically, Laura, Jester, being an agent of chaos purely, totally botched the role-playing in the sense that by Jester throwing out something random and bullshit, it shut down the role-playing. Like, right. That was the opportunity for them to engage the Spectre creature. Like, I don't know how it would, like you said, we have no idea how it would have gone on long term. But Matt several times alluded to the fact that they said the wrong thing,
right,
and triggered a combat instead of some kind of other encounter.
So I tried to figure out what this creature was as they were fighting it, and I couldn't figure it out. I didn't know what he was using as the mini. And I, based on its powers, I didn't know what it was off the top of my head. Were you able to figure it out?
I thought it was just like a wraith. Or, you know what? It actually reminds me of a monster from previous editions that is very much like a wraith. It was like an aslip or something like that.
Okay.
I'm probably not pronouncing it right. I can vaguely remember how it's spelled, and it looks very wraith-like. But I believe they had like a madness babble type power.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll have to look that up. But I was
probably like right over there.
I was the horde of monster manuals to my left. Yeah. Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about now. But I wasn't able to do it. So they wind up fighting this wraith-like creature. It summons more will-o'-the-wisps in these cages, and like Laura, when Nott went off into the corner, Laura's like, there's things that are going to be coming out of there, and he's like, eh. So I thought that was pretty amusing. And again, given how high the armor class of the will-o'-wisps, they're like, I'm not attacking them. I'm just going to attack the urns that are in these cages.
With disadvantage, you're just better off. Yeah.
AC 10 to 12 on these pots with disadvantage is much easier than I think the AC 19 or 20 with major damage reduction on everything on the will-o'-the-wisps. So
wait till Nott gets to 8th level and gets sharpshooter. Then she is going to be absolutely devastating.
Sharpshooter plus the fact that you're going to have a lot of sneak attack dice on top of that. So.
Well, she's already got crossbow expert. Yeah. So I can just imagine the next thing she's going to take is, instead of a stat bump, is going to go with sharpshooter for the extra dice. They ignore cover, especially after like this incident, right? Because had she had sharpshooter instead of crossbow expert, then like, oh nope, I ignore cover, so forget that.
Right. So they wind up, taking out the creature. They wind up taking out the will-o'-the-wisps. There's some damage done. party members are hurt, and the specter, creature winds up coming out again. And they're like, oh crap, this thing's not going away. So they have to begin figuring out, well, where did the thing come from? They put together the clues of, well, the will-o-wisp came out of the urns. Maybe there's another urn as well. And they find out that, it came through the bookshelf. So they rock the bookshelf back and forth until that falls over. And they find this little alcove that Nott, coats herself in oil and dives in and winds up after a couple hits taking out the urn, dealing with the spectral creature.
Yeah, they'd also kind of like found some clues in that book about who the spectral creature was. So there was that going on. And then, like you said, Nott goes in, they find the bookshelf, find it, take it out, and then Nott finds some traps, because she's getting really good at finding traps. Just not in that way.
She's good at finding them, just not really disarming them.
And then, and it's funny. And she like comes out and starts distributing like stuff that she found.
Well, and there were two, fancy made urns that looked expensive. She found a box full of jewelry, and she's like, pockets the jewelry. It's like, I found some urns.
Yeah. And, Mollymauk is, wait a minute, I heard 2 traps go off, and not 1.
So she is convinced that she needs to be a part of the group. And Molly is like, look, when you're doing your own thing, anything you find, anything you take, it's all yours. But when we're working as a team, it's evensies. Everything gets split fair and share. Once they have everything together, the problems are dealt with. Now they're like, all right, what everything can we find and put together? And how can we hide shit from the gentleman so that we get a bigger cut?
There was that going on. And also, even when they're dividing things up amongst themselves, which was hilarious, and Nott's like, well, the rings are jewelry. There's girls here. The girls should get the jewelry. And then I should get more for finding it. And I should get more for sharing with everybody.
That whole sequence, I just couldn't stop laughing, because they're going through and, Jester's like, well, I'll take the one that Fjord doesn't want. And, Yasha's like, really? And then Nott's like, oh, I've got a nose ring. I could replace this. And it's like, it doesn't work that way. These are rings. And then realize that they're not, they're just metallic bands that are, made out of, silver and whatnot. It's like, oh, they're not as nice as what the party was envisioning. So it was pretty amusing from that standpoint.
And then from there, they decide to go exploring a little bit more. Well, part of them, half of them do.
So they back out of this whole, for lack of a better word, dungeon, this whole, complex, and they go back to the boats. And because they're talking about wanting to give the one book to the gentleman, because they're going to have to part with stuff, Caleb is like, I want to read all of this. I've skimmed through it, but I really need to read it.
Well, the other thing, too, is 3 of them are beat to piss.
There is that. So, Caleb, Nott, and Yasha decide to remain with the one boat, while the other 4 decide to push on and go in the direction of the current and see what's further down. And they realize, as they get further in, that there's a waterfall, and had they taken the other path, they would have careened off this waterfall. Mollymauk and Fjord, they dive in and they swim under the waterfall, and they find this alcove with a half-elven skeleton in some kind of manacles.
Well, before that, Beau actually finds it, because she uses her staff to reach through.
Oh, that's true.
She's like, there's always something behind the waterfall. And they also almost swamp the boat, because they get too close to the waterfall and it starts filling up with water.
So they have to steer out of the current there. But Fjord and Molly, they go in. I expected the skeleton to get up and do something, but it doesn't. They snap the bones, and Fjord just kind of comes back with the manacles.
They're going to get a reputation with these manacles. They're always like bringing manacles in. So.
Now, they take the manacles, they wind up going back. Jester has to make a endurance check or con save to stave off exhaustion as she's now fighting the current. They come back, they decide they're now going to do a long rest, and this is when Caleb is like, well, I wanted to read this book, and if they've been gone an hour, that's enough time for me to have done it. And, Matt's like, well, do you have a spell slot for comprehend languages? And Caleb's like, no, I don't. And before Liam actually checks, I'm like, that's a ritual spell. Because, like, I love rituals. And before, like, he winds up checking, I'm like, all right, come on, say it. And he does his research. He's like, haha, I can do it as a ritual. I'm like, yes.
So do you think the alcove was anything, or do you think it was just Matt threw something in there because they wanted to press on?
I don't know. I think it could have been something. They didn't really investigate it heavily. It could be a seed for later, or it could have just been, well, there's something there.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't get good checks when they were investigating the body, so they didn't get any clues off the body. The only thing they really came up with was, it seems like this was like maybe a prisoner that escaped and didn't think this through very well.
The fact that this is, a tunnel route for this smugglers organization, it's highly possible that anything could have, either been in there or, someone could have been in hiding and realized, well, I starved to death because I can't get away. I've got these manacles and I can't swim too well with them. There could be a lot of story there, or it could just be a dead end.
And they also kind of surmised they may have come over the waterfall as well, because they found the boat at the bottom and stuff. So,
well, there was a bunch of wreckage, that anything that goes the wrong way could wind up, getting torn asunder there.
So from there, they go back to the gentleman, and but first they try and convince the guards to not blindfold them and bring them back and go against the gentleman's wishes. And they're like, screw that, hold that noise, we're not doing that.
I don't care who you are. I've got my orders. I'm more scared of the gentleman than I am of you. That was my insight roll.
Yeah.
And they're like, you're getting blindfolded, and you're going to they wind up snaking through the exact same path that they led before, and they get brought, in. It's like 6 a.m., and like they wind up getting some role playing with the gentleman.
And breakfast,
so that he wants to finish his breakfast before he can go have his breakfast.
Yeah, well, and so they all basically they try BSing him. He sees through it for the most part, and even the parts that that seems like was successful, in my opinion, I think he was completely onto them and was letting it ride because he feels like they're going to be useful tools in the future.
To me, when he mentioned that, like, these pots were, pre-divergence, that's actually a nod to the campaign, the first campaign, where the divergence was, like, very, very early history. So if these things are from that era, he straight up said, like, these are really valuable to the right buyer. So like they could be potentially priceless, artifacts.
Not anymore.
Well, no, the two things, the two vases that they brought back.
The ones they brought back.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Those things could be literally priceless. And like,
I was thinking of all the smashed urns they left behind them.
No.
Nott would cry.
The two urns, and the fact that she pulls urns out of her haversack, he's no joke. He's going to be like, well, that's a bag of holding, or that's it's something of holding. He's gonna know that. It's a very magic heavy world. This guy's knowledgeable, so I'm totally seeing that he sees through it. Now I think Matt plays natural 20s beat all. Because Beau did roll a nat 20 on her deception check. Technically, by roll in 5e, that only works for saving throws and attack rolls, opposed checks. You could have a +1 to your deception and roll a natural 20. If I roll a 19 and I've got a +6, you didn't beat me. I still have a higher roll. So it's 6 of one, half dozen of another. But I totally agree with you, Dave, that he saw through it and is like, you know what? There's something shady going on here, but you know what? I've got all of these things. I think these guys are going to be useful to me. So whatever it is that you found, I'm going to let this slide. I think what I got was more than enough.
Yeah, so I'm curious to see where that goes. And then from there, they go into a lot of different downtime activities, of which I think Nott's was probably the most interesting in the sense of revealing stuff, right? You know, because she takes all this stuff, and much of it is just bullshit, right? That she has found. Like the freaking doorknob she stole. And she puts it all in a box and she just sends it somewhere. She pays a lot of gold to do it. She sends 50 gold. So it's like, okay, what is she sending stuff back to? We already know she's kind of running, right, from something, it seems like. And, you know, so that's kind of curious to see as that unfolds a little bit more and we get more of that backstory. But, you know, definitely... It gave us another glimpse into the Nott character, and also it shows that, you know, maybe she isn't just out for herself. She's got something else going on, and you know, and there's a bigger picture she's working towards, because we've seen that she seems to be trying to build up Caleb to this point where he can defend her and do something that she needs, but maybe it's not for her. Maybe it's for someone else. You know, now we have some clues to kind of look forward to as things go.
Is she paying off some kind of debt or some kind of bribe? Is she sending money to somebody who needs it more?
Does she have a family?
Yeah, you know, so there's a number of different story elements that could be going in that direction.
Does she have her own Oscar?
She could very well have her own Oscar. And that I thought was pretty cool. Beau winds up going and doing some more training with her monk order, you know, kind of reporting in. It's like, well, I've been here in Zadash for a while. Let me go say hey.
And it turns out they have their own, like, ninja warrior facility. You know, so she had to, like, run through all the things and push the button.
So Travis is like, you know, I totally want to go there and train. And I'm like, is this Fjord saying this or is this Travis saying this?
I don't know.
Like, I thought that was a little curious. Caleb, you know, gets Jester pulled aside and like, I want to study the haversack. And at first, I thought he was talking about, oh, well, I'm into magic. This is a magic item. I want to know how to do it.
No, it was the stuff inside.
Like, no, I want the dodecahedron. And I totally didn't see that coming. And
the moat of possibilities?
The moats of possibility. The moat of possibilities. I forget which one the S is on. But you know, so he winds up going this whole thing, and you know, with a little bit of, you know, touchy doodad thing, they can get a little minor luck. You know, once a day. I think it's kind of cool. It's kind of interesting. Doesn't require any kind of attunement. They wind up doing some shopping. You know,
we overlooked something. We totally overlooked Ford's dream. He had another dream.
That's right. After Fjord got wet, because every time Fjord gets wet, he winds up having the dream. Because he dove into the water while they were still in the complex. And they take the long rest before they boat back to the gentleman. You know, this, you know, oceanic presence, you know, kind of comes to him. And his, you know, bonded longsword kind of appears to him, and the thing just is like, consume.
So, all right. First of all, one, he ends up stealing Mollymauk's stick as being a carny with this one. But two, like, part of me was thinking like that like, well, maybe it doesn't really mean what Fjord thinks it means, and I just envision this like cosmic being going, "No, you fool! I did not mean it literally."
I was like, all right, well, you're trying to get him to kill things, you know, to consume their souls or something. That was the direction I was like. And
Fjord took it literally.
He's like, "Do you want me to eat this?"
So he sword swallows.
So he brings it to his mouth, and I'm like, "He's really gonna do this? What the hell?" He puts the thing in his mouth, and as he absorbs and eats this longsword, you know, he summons his weapon, and the falchion comes.
Well, no,
back.
when he wakes up the next day.
Yeah.
He's got a little bit of blood on his mouth. That's it. And like you said, he's like, I summon my weapon, and when he does, it's the falchion instead of the longsword.
So, and the falchion has been somewhat changed, and it's got some of the design work from the longsword. So, like, all the enchantments that were on that thing have now been imbued into his bonded weapon, and it now looks like the weapon that he prefers to fight with. So I am wondering whether he can keep doing this and adding elements to his weapon. And if that happens, that's really darn cool and is way too powerful.
It is, but I don't think that is. I think he's just allowing him to move his bond to the weapon that's more powerful, and you still keep the story of the character intact as well. So he's kind of like taking those elements and mixing them up for, to make the player Travis happy and the character Fjord happy. And it's cool. It's thematic. It doesn't really hurt anything. Doesn't change anything. But like this is one of the problems you come up with when you're playing D&D, and you're like, yeah, there's a great idea for this exotic weapon you want to use. But you're like, yeah, I'm never going to find a magic anything of this.
So I look at this part and I'm like, I wonder whether there was any conversation that happened between Travis and Matt in, out of game to be like, hey, is there any way I can do this and that? Because it could, these kind of conversations happen all the time. So it's like, this could have been, pre-scripted and they just kind of do it there. And having the further element of diving into the water would totally make sense to be able to provoke this dream sequence. Whether that happens or not, doesn't matter.
It worked for the story.
Yeah. So, however it happened, this happened. Fast forward. He's pretty happy. He plays off the the blood and what have you. Oh, I bit myself, in my sleep. Whatever.
And then they kind of go in the whole tusk things with him being a half-orc, and so there's some personal stuff that comes out there as well.
Right.
And then so one of the more interesting things that happens is we actually see Skeen resurface, and that's the drug. And of course, it's funny because the gentleman is like, hey, just lay low for a few days and I'll clear things up for you guys, but give me a couple of days to work on this. And the first thing they want to do is go trip balls in public, essentially. Two of them anyway.
So Molly and Beau take this drug that, they wind up passing their saving throw, so nothing majorly bad happens, but they have the ability to see 10 feet out into the ethereal plane, which, we all know when you've got these layers of planes of existence, reality, weird stuff is there. You're just not really interacting with it. So I think it's a lot of fun. I like seeing, not that I'm into any of these kind of things, but I like seeing the elements added into the game because it makes it real. It makes the world that much more, visible and tangible because these seedier elements happen whether you're aware of it or not.
Well, so taking the drug too is really dangerous. So he really was trying to instill that in the players and their characters. It's like, hey, had you failed that first saving throw, you'd have been stunned for an hour. And that second saving throw, I think, something bad would have happened if you failed that one as well. And even just taking it, you felt kind of worn out and tired. But it was funny. It's like, Mollymauk, the first thing he's like, oh yeah, I need to go to a cemetery right now. And Beau's all kinds of tripped out. Mollymauk is just loving it. So, and the other players are following them to make sure they don't get in any trouble. And they're talking like no one's there. And they're like, and they're like, oh, we're right here. We heard the whole thing. So that part was pretty fun. And, so they spent a lot of time doing that kind of stuff, towards the tail end of the session.
So they do whatever shopping that they're looking for. Yasha goes to Pamatsol and sells her moon two-handed sword, and she convinces him to get 40 gold instead of 30 gold. And I'm like, oh god, that hurts. A magic sword of any kind of amount selling for that little, just
Well, I think it was a super minor magic on there.
I think it just counted as a magic item. It didn't even confer any pluses. But I mean, in our games, we don't have magic item trade, so selling magic items is always just kind of weird.
Maybe not selling them. Buying them is definitely weird for us. It's the other way around. Because sometimes you just have something and you just can't use it. But it comes up, and there's definitely a little bit more magic-rich world, and there are some benefits to that because it is fun to kind of have the magic shop, and we get Puman Sola from it.
Oh, absolutely. Or if you go back to the first game, you've got Gilmore's Glorious Goods, and there's whole thing on it, that story angle.
Is her die named for that guy?
Marissa,
one of her die is Gil.
Oh, is it? It could be.
Because she's always like, don't fuck me, Gil. So, I don't know. Maybe you guys know out there. You can let us know. We got a place for it down in the comments below. While we're at it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
You can hang out with us over on Facebook.
So until next time,
stay nerdy.